Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal. Oh, God bless you. Joined by Augie over here, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. I just got sneezed on. That's what being a parent's all about. There's sneezed, drooled. Oh, he farted as well. Finally, we got honey, he farted. I'm the fart and burp king. Anyway, that's not important to this video. This episode of Bachelor Nation News is all about Kaitlyn Bristowe and comments she made on a recent podcast from a few days ago where she says, look, I just didn't want to marry an influencer. I didn't want my fiance, my boyfriend to get into podcasting. And on the outset, you might go, well, geez, who is she to control what he does? But, hey, we can get into why she might think that way. You may call me biased, and that's okay. Clearly, I've gotten to know Caitlyn more than I've gotten to know Jason, and that's fine. That's okay. I don't think bad things of Jason. I'm actually doing his podcast next month, and I'm sure if he watched this video, he'd say, Dave, just another neutral opinion right down the middle. So we're going to get into it right now. And by the way, I did respond this morning to being called out maybe I go to the wide shot here. I did respond this morning to being called out by a friend regarding my coverage of the Clayton trial. I'm not mentioning this to be leaguer of the point, but for those that didn't watch my other video, I'm sharing it with you now that I've got a result. Did he just fart? Oh my gosh, she's farting so much. Oh my, did you hear that? Oh my gosh, thank you. You can go back to bed now. Oh boy, you know that feeling when you're just happy as a parent that your kid finally passed whatever was causing him gas? Anyhow, wow, sorry. I'm going to leave this in. So anyhow, I talked about this call out and I'm taking it to heart and I'm not being defensive and I'm not blasting this person. Do me a favor, if you're a friend of mine, never comment anything negative on anyone else's channel, especially on behalf of me. But if you do want to listen to my thoughts on that matter, you can on today's podcast, The Rush Hour. I'll post a link below. All right, so let's get into it. Here's what Caitlyn had to say. And by the way, I did search, if you look at the comments from previous videos and just search bias, you'll get people that said, Dave, love your channel, but you have to understand that you're being her friend will automatically have a little bit of a bias. I'm not denying it. I'm not denying there's a bias. I'm just saying I can still be as neutral as possible. You're allowed your opinion. This other comment is a little more on the negative side. So biased as usual when it comes to Caitlyn. When Jason is posting videos showing his healing journey and his vulnerability, he's not protecting her. When she's, blah, blah, goes back and forth. It's like, look, I understand. Their breakup is messy. What that means is, and what I talked about on this morning's podcast is bitterness, is it's good to try to get over that bitterness. And that's one of the beauties of podcasting is that you can kind of try to talk it out. And while some people don't enjoy that it's in a public forum, my thought of that is, it's like, look, if a content creator, like someone like Caitlyn wants to wear her emotions on her sleeve, take it for what it's worth, enjoy the entertainment. Here's what she had to say about why she didn't want to date a podcaster, an influencer.
People laugh and have deep conversations and not so deep conversations. And just like, I always wanted my own radio show. And after breaking up with Sean and the relationship from the first, engagement from the TV show, I was like, I need to find somebody, like we said, who's like the roots, somebody that doesn't want to like be an influencer, be in this world, has a regular job, they're established in their own career, and they can kind of like shine in their world, and I can shine in mine, because for so long I'd been searching for something that I was good at that I could do and find as a career. And so,
boy, that sounds so reasonable. You wouldn't want to start dating somebody who already has a podcast and say, quit living your dream. But she's like, look, I started dating a guy who worked in business, and I didn't want to date a creative. There is that saying, like, only one person in a relationship should have a headshot. I don't know if that's true, but I understand that it can be hard to be competitive with each other. And also a fear Caitlyn must have is that Sean may have used her for clout, which I don't think was the case, but she might have this fear that these guys are only dating me because I was the Bachelorette, not for what I have now. And if they then parlay her audience into theirs, there may be a fear. Boy, am I just super rational? By the way, hello, Mrs. Bristowe. I hear you're a fan of the program. Big shout out to you. You did a great job with your daughter. We love her.
So when I met Jason, it was very much like, oh, no, I'm not going to be an influencer. I work at a bank. I'm VP of this bank. I worked way too hard in school to let that all go. I did 9 years of this. I got my MBA. I'm going back to my regular job. And I was like, okay, this is going to work out perfectly. He's a great guy.
Wanting wanting stability in an otherwise very unstable world of influencing.
He doesn't want to be an influencer. He's going to make hay while the sun shines because he was on The Bachelor and he can bring in some cash. But really, he's so established in his bank job that we're going to have our separate lives. Well, he lost that job because of me, because I said something in my podcast that involved him about me being on my period and us dry humping. LOL. And his boss was like, people can't Google you and see this kind of information come up. I knew he wasn't happy at that job, so I knew it was kind of a blessing in disguise, but I felt terrible. I almost threw up. I felt terrible. His whole family was upset. It felt like my fault. I felt so terrible about it. So what he did was move in with me and fully face first dive into influencer life. And I said, this is really hard for me because it was going to be a non-negotiable, but I love you and I'm going to look past this because you're a good person and I think you might be my person. So I was like, okay, I'm going to have to look past the fact that he's going to have to go dive in headfirst into the influencer world because he can make money that way and he can use his financial career to help other people. And I had said, and this is really selfish of me, but I knew that I couldn't be as supportive of a partner as I wanted to if he did this. I said,
By the way, I love people willing to talk about their flaws. She goes, this was selfish of me. Sorry to interject, I'm ruining the flow. But I just love that people will be brave enough to say, yeah, I'm working on this. I don't feel good about what I'm about to share with you.
Just going to ask you to please not start a podcast. It feels really important to me and it's something that makes me feel really special and I'm good at it. You know, not everybody had a podcast at the time. And he said, okay. And then as time went on, he realized that podcasting is another avenue for income and that he could do a finance podcast. Slowly but surely, it was like, he's definitely going to do a podcast. And I never want to be the person that says, me or a podcast, you pick. But I was hoping that I would be chosen. My feelings would be chosen. A podcast was not worth it for him when he could be making all this other money in other avenues. And he had said, you know, it's not fair if you emotionally and financially stunt my growth. And I had a full panic attack in my backyard because I didn't know how to behave. I didn't know how to, this was before.
And I'm sure now Jason Tartick's resentful of her. Look, it's tough. It's tough, you know. Relationships can't always grow in the same direction because different opportunities get in the way. I have friends that were comedians and one's career took off and the other one's didn't. And they, you know, it's hard to support the other when you're in the dogfight. So she finds a thing she loves, podcasting. Now, you could argue, if you wanted to, well, it's not a you versus him mentality. You guys can have separate podcasts where you support each other. You can have a content studio. Sure, all that can happen, but at the same time, you can't fault somebody for wanting their own thing in a relationship. You know what I mean? You just can't. Now, what's the result of that is you break up. Okay, that's the result. But I'd rather hear her share her story and he can share his, and I'm sure they're going to agree. She's not exactly making herself look great here. She's saying, oh, it's super selfish. I did this. This is me. Hello. I've got flaws. She did the whole if I'm being honest thing, which is what we love. So if I'm going to be accused of being biased, it's not because I'm being biased where I'm saying, no, Kaitlyn Bristowe's perfect. What I'm saying is she's as flawed as the rest of us. I embrace that.
Or I was on medication for my anxiety too. So I had a full panic attack because I felt like I wasn't chosen and that my feelings were not worth over money for him. And that had happened a few.
Which, by the way, is probably a false comparison. Like, it's probably not that he chose that over her feelings. He just had this drive within him, and he got this itch. But it must be very annoying. I mean, every time, you know what's annoying? I'll tell you this. Every time one of my family members goes, Dave, I'm thinking about starting a podcast, that's annoying. Because I'm like, well, where were you to support mine? And now you want to just do what I do because I make it look easy? This didn't take 10 years to get off the floor. I didn't have to create a child and pimp him out on camera to try to get some super chats here. I mean, I'm kidding slightly, but it's like, I get it. I understand. Maybe it's hard to understand because you don't have control over someone else's hopes and dreams. But like she said, on the onset, when they started dating, business guy, oh, great. He can do his thing. I'll do mine. And then he kind of encroached in her world. He's allowed to. She's allowed to feel kind of about it.
few times in my last relationship where I did not feel chosen. And I hate that I always have to talk about Sean and Jason because people know who they are. And those two relationships were very public. But I felt the same way with Sean. It was the nail in the coffin when he was going to open this gym. I felt like he didn't actually truly love me at the end. And he was hanging on to it just till his gym opened.
That had a nice, interesting edit there. I wonder what was said that got taken out.
So I was like, is he going to hang on to, get this where he wants to in his career, and then I'm going to be disposable? All fears that, of course, I'm working on in therapy, but just those are thoughts and lies I tell myself. And so, again, this was just like an open wound that he was kind of poking and going, it doesn't matter. Like, this for me, professionally, financially, personally, is for my growth. And
interesting. She said, thoughts and fears and lies I tell myself. Look, there's way more to this episode. You can go check it out, the Almost Adulting podcast. I, for one, stand by the fact that I like people doing inventory on their nonsense. Keep up the good work, Kaitlyn. Find a guy who doesn't have a podcast. I guess I'm off the table. I think my hands are full. We'll be back with more content right after this.